Hi, I'm Shar Backus, and I'm going to talk to you today about using the Enterprise Support Portal for Maps for Business. So you're probably watching this video because you've recently purchased a Maps for Business product, possibly the Maps API, which we're seeing here on morethanamap.com, and you should have received a welcome letter from us. And your welcome letter looks like this. It contains a whole bunch of information that you need to get started using the APIs, but we're not going to focus on the welcome letter today. We're going to focus on the Enterprise Support Portal. And your credentials to that portal come in a separate email, and it looks like this. Welcome to the Google Enterprise Support Portal, and a big long reference string. You can see here that there is a URL for you to log into, www.google.com/enterprise/portal. And we're going to go ahead and go there. You'll also notice, if you're very observant, that there's a redirect there, but you can always get to it by google.com/enterprise/portal. And when you log in, you're going to see a whole bunch of information that's pertinent to the purchased products that you own that are associated with your account. So here we can see some news and announcements about Earth Enterprise. We can also see information about the Google Maps Engine V1 API. And there are a whole bunch of useful things down the left here. Let's start by looking at your profile. So this is available for you to edit and includes information that we might need if we need to contact you. By default, your email has to be in here. If you would like to enter a phone number here, a title, any mailing address information here, you're welcome to do that. Your phone number is very useful to us if we ever need to call you, so I encourage you to add a valid phone number here. Next, we'll look at the My Account page. So this has some of the information that we just saw from my profile, but it also has a list of contacts at your organization that we might try to reach out to if we are trying to help you with a Maps for Business problem. And you can also add new contacts here. If you'd like to remove a contact, you'll have to write to our team that works on account maintenance, but to add a contact, you can do that yourself right here. We're going to cover a few more functions of the support portal. One of the most important functions, if you're a customer of the Maps APIs, is the ability to enable a domain for use with your client ID. In this page, you can add URLs for new sites or development sites, any site that's public that you're going to use with your client ID. You can also, as you can kind of see here from the examples, add an IP address. And there are a few articles here to help you understand more about why we do the registering of URLs and troubleshooting the process of authorization and authentication with your client ID. We're going to not cover those right at this moment, but I do encourage you to check out these links. If you need to remove a URL from this interface, we ask that you contact us. Later in the year, we hope that we might be able to give that facility to you through the portal, but right now, to delete a URL, you need to file a case with us. A couple other functions that are really useful. You can use the portal to view your usage. So if you've, for example, purchased Maps API for business licenses, you might want to know which APIs are being used with your client ID. And this is the interface where you can look that information up. As you can see here, all of the APIs that are associated with your ID are listed. If there's usage, there's also a link where you can download a CSV of that usage. If you're using channel IDs, you can also just look at a particular channel ID. Let's take an example of that. So there wasn't much usage on this for today, but if you're using channels heavily, you can view usage specifically for a channel on this page. You can also view web services usage. So there's a difference between the client APIs and the web services APIs and the way that we measure them. We provide Maps Analytics specifically for the JavaScript API. This is not the web services that we were just talking about, but one of the client APIs. This is a drill down into usage of your JavaScript APIs. There are a lot of additional details that you can get. You can look at the the map types that have been used. You can look at the zoom levels that have been used. Places API has some data here. Again, this is all for your calls to these APIs from the JavaScript APIs. But the analytics here are significantly more detailed than what you saw previously in the usage report. The usage report is kind of intended for gross reporting, and the analytics are true analytics. So that kind of covers the things that we have here in the left drop-down, excluding logout, which we'll do at the end. We're also going to cover over just a few more pieces of information here. If you need to contact the support team, there's a Contact Us tab here. You can contact us primarily by email by filing a case, and we'll go over how to do that shortly. But if you're ever going to try to contact us by phone, phone numbers are listed here. For geospatial in this account, it's listed towards the bottom. There are 800 numbers in a lot of countries, and we encourage you to take advantage of that if you need it. Most importantly, there's a PIN that you're going to need when you call into any of these numbers. For Maps API and for most of the enterprise products for Maps for Business, the phone line is considered a hotline. So if you're in terrible trouble, you've got a site that's down, you've got an application with end users who've been unable to access the service for more than 10 or 15 minutes, that's the time when you want to call the hotline, and you'll get your call dispatched to an engineer at Google. But for most scenarios, you're not going to need the hotline. You're going to need to file a case with us. So let's look at how to do that. Here you can see the case overview screen. So cases that you've filed previously are visible here. And at any time, you can click on the subject, have a look at the status, see the comments from the engineers who have been working on your case, and so forth. But back to the case list, creating a new case. So let's try filing a case. For this particular account, the sample account that we're using, there's a whole bunch of assets. In your account, you might only see 1 or 2 assets, but let's go ahead and file a case here for the Maps API. The next drop-down will populate based on your product selection with the group that should handle your case. Tech support cases are cases where you have a technical question. You think that you might have found a bug in the API, or you're not quite sure how to use the API. Maybe you're having trouble signing a request, something like this. Non-tech tickets are for other kinds of issues. For example, maybe you got a bill that you don't understand, or you might have gotten an email saying that your usage is in a particular state and you're not sure what to do about that. So anything that's not related to the technical use of the APIs, you would select non-tech support operations. For our sample, we're going to go ahead and use tech support. And here we ask that you select a component so that we kind of narrow down your problem. Let's talk about the JavaScript API in this case. So now that we've selected the JavaScript API, this subcomponent dropdown has populated, and perhaps the problem that you're having is with loading the API. It's also important to us that you select an appropriate priority for your case. Most cases are P4, you want to report something to us. If you have an instance where something you feel is broken, but your end users aren't affected, you could select P2 or P3. If you have a case where your end users are completely unable to use the service, we recommend that you select P1. Also, as we mentioned earlier, you can call the hotline when you're having a P1 issue. If you are curious about the priorities, there's a link out here to definitions on how to use them. So now that we've selected a priority for our case, let's say that we don't have a very urgent question, we would like to tell the recipient of the case whether this is a web-based use of the JavaScript API or a standalone non-web-based use. For our instance, let's say that it's web-based. And here we could enter an affected site, and our problem is that we can't load the API. Having trouble getting started. So here, normally we'd include steps to reproduce. I'm going to skip it for the purposes of this demo, but we'd like you, for example, to show us here the request or the piece of JavaScript that you're using to load the API. That would be a really helpful thing to include here. We'll go ahead and hit Create New Case, and now we see kind of immediately here feedback on the case that we created. We see what we entered. If there's anything that we think we'd like to edit, we can go ahead and edit it. In addition to creating a case in the portal, this also generates an email. So here we are back in our inbox, and we see 2 emails relevant to our case. One is just what we saw in the portal, a reiteration of the information that we entered. And the other email has some information for you about what to expect now that you've filed your case. This paragraph on escalation channels, we're actually going to go back to the portal now and talk about. So if you filed this case and you filed it as a P3 and then you realize, actually this might be an urgent problem, I'm getting calls from my users now that my site is down, you could choose to use the escalate case button, or you could choose to go back to contact us, hit the phone number, get your PIN, and give us a call. For now, though, we'll return to the paradigm where we say this is a non-urgent case, and let's have a look at what kind of happens as the case is picked up and handled by an engineer at Google. So here we are kind of back in our inbox. We're going to take a look at the response that we got from Google Enterprise, and we see here a new case comment. And the content here says, oh hey, there's some documentation that you might want to look at. And there's also a little fun note about a YouTube video for the upcoming Google I/O. This is how it looks in the inbox, but we can also have a look at it in the portal. In the portal view, we see that there's been a status change to in progress Google support, and this means that a technical solutions engineer is working on your case. When we click on the case, we can see the same information that was in our inbox and the information that we entered ourselves. You can either reply to the email or add an additional comment here. We encourage you to use the portal when possible and add a comment if you want to write back to the technical solutions engineer. So perhaps you go out and you visit the documentation that was sent and you have an additional question. You could come back to the portal and add a comment to describe your question. So after some time passes, you might go ahead and use this documentation and have another question. You could come back to the portal. You might notice that the status has changed to solution offered or waiting on customer response. If it says solution offered, the engineer feels like they've probably offered you the thing that you need to go further, but you can still reopen this case. If it says waiting on customer response, we're actually waiting for some information from you. So let's go ahead and look at our case again, and we can add a comment, just kind of typing in a JavaScript end tag there to indicate that you could send us a snippet of code. Go ahead and save it. And you'll see back in the case list that the status has changed. It's back in progress Google support again. So that's most of what you need to know about your case handling experience on the portal. And as a quick review, we talked about your profile page, where you can edit information about you. We really like for you to enter your phone number there if possible. Your account page, where you can add new contacts if you need to. Add URLs for people who are using Maps API for Business. This is where you enable a domain for use with your client ID. Usage reports, so that you can take a look at the usage of the various APIs that you've purchased with your client ID, either for the client-side APIs or the web services. And finally, analytics. So for those of you who are using the JavaScript APIs, you can really drill down on your usage here, talking about things like zoom levels. Go ahead and log out of the portal. We encourage you to use the portal to contact us, to get help from us, to give us your feedback. We also encourage you to head out to the documentation pages, to participate in the YouTube channels, and interact with us in as many ways as you can. Thanks for listening, and have fun with your maps.